Mike, good. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone knows this is about the USS Stark Memorial report and how to fill it out and what information goes in there. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Last night, as I said, we had 84 people attending. The last number I saw here was 34, so we have a much smaller crowd. Just some housekeeping issues. This session is being recorded. And as I told the group last night, the best recording between last night and tonight is the one that will be put on the website. I have a feeling that this will probably be the one put on the website because we had some technical issues at the very end. So unless we have the same thing happen tonight, it'll probably be this one. This presentation I'm showing you right now, it is already on the Veterans Committee webpage. So don't worry about writing down anything you see or taking pictures of the screen. All you have to do is go to the National SAR website, go to the Veterans Committee, and at the bottom, you will see this presentation along with other resources related to service to veterans activities. If you got a question, go ahead and ask it as we're going through. I think that'll probably be a little bit better, particularly with a smaller group. So you can also submit them via chat, but I'll have to warn you, if you submit a question on chat, there's a good chance it's going to take me a while to see it. So if someone wants to bring my attention to it, I will be happy to do that. Okay. He's trying to join the meeting. I don't know how to help him there. So anyway, if you have a question during chat or submit one during chat, it may take me a while to get to it, but I will get to it. Okay, I won't read all this. You guys can read as well as I can, but just real quick, this USS Stark Memorial Award was authorized in 1988. We did have a major revision of it that was first utilized in 2022. The year 2021, we just kind of looked at the whole thing and revised it from top to bottom with new eyes. A lot of changes were made. Things that weren't reportable before were added, and things were moved around, and it was streamlined quite a bit. The purpose of this report is twofold. First one is to recognize chapters and societies within the SAR for their participation in the veterans community and supporting activities, supporting the veterans community. The other purpose of this report, and as I said here in bold, it's more than about just winning an award. The Veterans Committee, we look at these reports, we see the level of activity that's being reported, where it's being reported, and we do a fair amount of data mining on these reports to figure out and determine what programs in the SAR related to veterans are doing well and what ones we got a little bit of a gap and we need to do some work on. As a way of example, I like to talk about the SAR representatives and deputy representatives that are assigned to VA hospitals. Several years ago, because of looking at the reports, we recognized that there weren't a whole lot of SAR members being reported as being representatives or deputy representatives at the VA medical centers. So a couple of years ago, we started making a big push to get more SAR members to volunteer to be representatives at the VA medical centers, and we're continuing in that role to get more as time goes on. So after this presentation, don't be surprised if you hear from me where I'm trying to recruit representatives and deputy representatives for your particular state or area. Okay, just some basics here. The reporting year is from January 1st to December 31st. It follows a calendar year. During the course of the year, there are two forms available to you. The first one I'm going to talk about is called the Stark Tracker or the Stark Activities Tracker. It is an Excel spreadsheet, and I highly recommend you use it. And the purpose of it is it allows you to record your service to veterans activities as they occur during the year. So as you or a chapter member, your chapter does something that's reportable, you can go in there, report it shortly after it occurs. Then you don't have all the trouble at the end of the year trying to get all your information together and determine how many points you have. this year, 2024, is a transition year. The actual score sheet that we have been using that we asked to be submitted is a PDF file. Those of you who have participated in the past, I'm sure, are familiar with that PDF file. But this year in 2024, still go ahead and submit the PDF file, but I highly recommend that you submit the tracker spreadsheet as well. We're wanting the chapters and societies to take the opportunity this year in 2024 to start using the tracker so they're familiar with it and they know how to use it. And if they have any questions or issues, we can address it during this year. Because in 2025, for the contest year 2025, the intention is to switch over completely to the tracker Excel spreadsheet. And the main reason for that is the tracker spreadsheet gives a lot more detail on the type of activities that the chapters and societies are doing. Again, that helps us with the data mining. Those of you who are familiar with the PDF score sheet, you know that all we're really seeing is numbers. You know, you're reporting hours and time and whatever, but we're not seeing where you're really spending that time and where all the effort's going into. So again, the transition to the spreadsheets will be very similar to what the Americanism report is like now, for those of you who are familiar with the Americanism report. Okay, the timing for submissions. Here I have it being recommended that you get it into your state committee chairman by the 15th of January. That is just my recommendation. It is really up to your particular state Veterans Committee chairman on when he wants the reports. He may want them earlier, he may want them later. It really depends on how many reports he's anticipating getting from your state and how much time he has to do it. So he may want it earlier in January, he may want it later. You have to check with your state Veterans Committee chairman. What I have here in red is the big change for the current year for 2024. This for 2023, we had 218 chapter reports submitted. And the number of reports we've been getting has been growing considerably each year. And we had some issues this year because some chapters submitted directly to the National Veterans Committee and bypassed their state Veterans Committee chairman. And so he was unaware of those reports being submitted, and he really needed them for the state report. And so there were several states that I was having to deal with the last few days saying, okay, these are the reports I got from your state. What do you have that I don't have? And what do I have that you don't have? And so we had to kind of do a little reconciliation to make sure both of us had all the reports. So what's going to happen this year or at the end of this year when you submit your reports for this current year is all your chapter reports should go to your state Veterans Committee chairman, and he will handle them, process them, and forward them on to me. If your state does not have a Veterans Committee chairman, then send them to your state president. At Spring Leadership, I spoke to the Council of State Presidents and informed them this is what we were going to be doing this coming year. And I told them, if you don't have a state Veterans Committee chairman, this will be great incentive for you to get one before these Stark reports come into the state presidents. But either way, find out if you got a state Veterans Committee chairman, they go to him. If you don't have one, go to the state president. And then the state needs to get all the reports in to the National Veterans Committee chairman no later than February 1st. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I'm just going to go through, this is kind of a 30,000 foot view of all the sections in the report, and I'll go through each one of them in more detail as we progress in this presentation. Section 1 is where you report chapter members who are appointed to VA medical hospitals to their CDCE committees or their VAVS committees. The CDCE is the new term for that committee, but some VAs still use VAVS for their volunteer services committees. Each hour served in a VA hospital voluntary services is reported in section 2. Section 3 is for SAR members visiting a veteran or taking a veteran out on an outing, and we will discuss outings in a little bit more detail. Section 4 is where you report personal care gift donations that go to veterans in a VA or state hospital or state veterans nursing home. If you make a monetary donation, that goes in Section 5. Publications, whether it's books, magazines, movies, DVDs, music, CDs, anything along those lines, those go in Section 6. If you're participating and present the SAR Wounded Warrior Challenge Coin Certificate, that goes in Section 7. Activities where you are recognizing or supporting veterans in cooperation with another organization, that is in Section 8. The decorating of veteran graves and attendance in funerals is in Section 9. New and used men's and women's clothing is in Section 10. And new or used but working items such as TVs, computers, appliances, etc. Those are in Section 11. And again, we'll go through all these in more detail.
Question, Scott.
Yes.
So we're running a program right now, like each month at the meeting, people are bringing in new clothing options that we've given them because we're taking them to the DeBakey VA Medical Hospital. So does that go in 12, which one of those?
Section 10.
Section 10 for
Yeah.
sure.
When I get to Section 10, I'll get into more detail on that.
Thank you. Okay.
Before you move on from that point, we're being told by the Veterans Administration that they will no longer take used clothing. Now, I don't know if that's true across the board or not.
I'm surprised you're just having that happen because in my area, that has been the practice for 6 years. At least.
Same here. It's been that way forever, but it's
we'll talk about used clothing when we get to that. Okay, so here's just the description of some of the reportable activities. SAR representatives on VA CDCE or VAVS committees, VA volunteer hours. Those could be on-site volunteering, Operation Ancestor Search, or if you are on a VA-sponsored funeral detail. Visiting a veteran, taking a veteran on an outing, and we'll talk about all the different types of outings. Again, personal care items, games, non-perishable food, monetary donations, again, the publications, books, magazines, etc. The Wounded Warrior Challenge coins, attending an event in support of a veterans service organization, decorating a veteran's grave with a flag or wreath, buying a wreath from Wreaths Across America and also placing that wreath, attending or participating in a veteran's funeral, and donating new or used clothing, and again, donating new or used furniture, appliances, or electronics. Okay, so tracking and reporting, as we talked earlier, I highly recommend that you use the Stark Activities Tracker. And again, it provides a lot of detail that helps us and you. Now, the Excel spreadsheet, the tracker, is also really good if you have a chapter member who is working towards his service to veterans medal. There's different ways you can do that. The chapter can report his activities for him and then just kind of through the spreadsheet keep track of how many points he has, or if he is good at Excel, he can just download his own Excel spreadsheet and just track his activities to record his points, so he has his own personal file for tracking those points. The actual score sheet itself, as I said, is a PDF file. For 2024, this current contest year, at the very end of the form, on the last page in the lower right-hand corner, it'll say Form USS Stark 2024. Make sure that is the form you are using. I've had people, last year I had a chapter submit a report. The form was from 2016. And I can tell you the score sheet had changed considerably between 2023 and 2016. And so it was really a mess trying to figure that out. Okay, so this is what the summary page on the tracker spreadsheet looks like. It will automatically score up all your points based on sections. Now, it's important, if you were to go to the SAR webpage or website, under members, forms and manuals, you can get both the tracker and the PDF score sheet. If you have already downloaded them for this year, first of all, make sure it says as of 31 December 2024. If you have any other year, you're using the wrong one. And I will tell you the benefit of using the one that says 2024 is there were some bugs discovered in the 2023 tracker spreadsheet that messed up the score. Those have been fixed in this spreadsheet. So make sure you're using 2024 for the Excel spreadsheet and also for the PDF file. Okay, so this is the first page of the actual PDF score sheet. And I won't go through it again, but I just want to point out here, again, it's got the instructions, everything you need to know about how to submit the score sheet or the score sheet. And it also answers a lot of the definitions that I'm going to go through here now. So any questions you have about who to submit the report to, certain things that can be reported, go here first. And then if this doesn't answer your question, then you can come to me. But again, the circled area here is just saying submit your reports to your state Veterans Committee chairman or your state president if you don't have a state Veterans Committee chairman. Okay, as far as how the awards go, for chapter awards, there are 4 chapter size categories. So depending on how large your chapter is, it's going to depend on which one of these categories it goes into. Now, for the last couple of years, the winning chapter in each section is determined on the points that chapter accumulates per chapter member. So, and we'll talk about here in a minute, make sure you put in an accurate chapter member or number when on the score sheet. So you can see the chapter sizes there. For the state societies, there are 2 different state society sizes. There's under 1,000 members and 1,000 members and more. And just as it is with the chapters, the states societies are ranked based on the points per society member. Now,
Scott,
yes,
Scott, what time of the year do you take the chapter membership?
I'll get to that in a second, but January 1st.
Okay.
I'll speak on that in a little bit more detail, but January 1st is the date that should be used.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if everyone's aware, but there is also a State Service Veteran Award, and we first issued this or was established in 2021. This award is for state societies only, and it's basically a participation award for reaching certain criteria. So to receive this award, the state society must, first of all, the state society needs to submit a Stark report, and it must have at least 50 points on it. In addition,
Scott,
yes.
I'm in Columbia, Tennessee, and our nearest our veterans, for lack of a better term, hospital is 60 to 80 miles out. I have just stood up a veteran-friendly congregation at my church, and we're also putting food and money into our VSO across the street. Is this something I can claim?
Yes, you guys are getting way ahead of me here.
Okay, sorry.
So we'll get to it.
Okay.
I'm going to go through every section and every activity you can report in that section, and hopefully most, if not all, your questions be answered. But I'm just trying to
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so for the state society, they must submit the Stark report. If the society has no chapters, all they got to do is do the state report with a minimum of 50 points. If the society has chapters, then at least 50% of its chapters must submit reports with at least 50 points for each chapter report. And they all must be in on the deadline. Now, achieving 50 points is really easy. Any of these things I have listed here will get you 50 points. If you have 5 hours of volunteer service, that's 50 points. If one chapter member goes to 5 veteran funerals, that's 50 points. Or if you have 5 chapter members go to 1 funeral, that's 50 points. 5 hours attending any veterans event, 5 cumulative hours. You don't have to spend 5 hours at one event. You can spend 1 hour at 5 events. Yeah, Steve? You're muted.
On the Wreaths Across America, our chapter donates 50 wreaths every year, which I personally match.
Right.
So how
We'll
do
get to
I?
that.
You
Right
get to
now, I'm
that.
just kind of giving you guys an overview. We'll start getting
Okay.
to the nitty-gritty details here in a minute.
Thank you.
Okay. $50 spent on donations of clothing, books, magazines, or personal care items. If you sponsor 3 Wreaths Across America Wreaths, that's going to get you 50 points. In addition to all that, you are also able to report mileage. And if you do certain events in colonial attire, you get extra points there. So getting 50 points, if you do anything with veterans, you're going to be able to get at least 50 points. Now, here's some important things to consider too as well. The definition of a veteran we are using here is a person who has honorably served or is currently serving in any branch of the United States Armed Services or the armed services of an allied country. Now, big reason why we have added armed services of an allied country is there are other awards and recognition within the SAR that can be given to someone who served in the armed services of allied countries. So we're just being consistent across the board on how we handle issues with veterans. Now, in the report, it says about submitting supporting documentation. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can do that if you want, but I know some chapters, they do a lot of donations, and for them to submit all their supporting documentation could be a major ordeal for them. However, do retain those records, those documentation on any donations you make, anything along those lines, because you could be asked to validate any of the activities you submit in your report. And I usually
lay down.
I usually have about half.
You're not going to leave him down here
so.
in his cage for him to whine at me.
I usually have about half a dozen chapters or so that I will ask them to validate information they have submitted in the report. 2 years ago, we had someone who reported some very high monetary donations. And so I just wanted to check on that, and they had the documentation to prove those donations were made, and it's good enough. You know, and also, you know, sometimes people, when they're entering numbers, they can get a decimal point off, and, you know, they may want to put in 450 and it ends up being 4,500. So those are the things I'm looking out for.
Scott, one question on magazines, et cetera, to VA facilities. I donate them down to.
Can you hold on?
They don't give.
I'm going to get to all these specific things about donations here in a minute, okay? I'm just trying to give you the overview of what's going on. Business attire, you're going to see business attire referred to in the report. Basically, that just means dress appropriate for the situation. We're not saying you have to wear a sport coat and tie necessarily, or you know, a polo and khakis or slacks or anything like that. But we just use that term because it was hard to come up with a universal term for all the sections. And as we get through there, I will explain that in a little bit more detail. Okay, service to veterans organizations. At various points in the report, you will see reference made to veteran service organizations. And these are VA recognized service organizations whose primary clients are veterans. Now, yeah, I lost everybody there for a second. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we had something weird like this happen last night, so. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so to be a veteran service organization for the purpose of the Stark Report, there are two conditions that have to be met. The organization has to be listed as a VSO by the VA, and right there's the link where you can go and check if there's any questions. And I was there on that website yesterday morning, and it used to be real easy to check on the VA recognized VSOs because they were all listed very nicely on a web page. Now what they have is you have to enter in the name of a VSO, and it'll tell you whether, or of an organization, it'll tell you whether it's a VSO or not. And the problem with that is if you don't get the name right, it's going to probably say it's not a VSO. So I don't think it's as good as it used to be, but if you got any questions about an organization, whether it's a VSO recognized by the VA or not, I can help you with that.
What is it?
The second condition that has to be met is the organization primary clients must be veterans. And that's important because the next bullet point here, there are organizations that are recognized as VSOs by the VA, but their primary clients are not veterans. And that would be organizations like the American Red Cross, Goodwill, and Salvation Army. Any donations made to these organizations are not reportable in the Stark as it stands. Organizations that do meet both conditions are the VFW, Disabled Veterans, American Legion, Vietnam Veterans, etc. So I just want to make that point because in the report, in a lot of sections, you will see the term or any other organization whose primary clients are veterans. That's what we're talking about here.
Scott, I would assume that means Toys for Tots for the Marine Corps would be acceptable.
No. Who's getting the toys? Unfortunately not. I mean, it's a worthwhile organization, but the toys are not going to veterans. That has come up before. Okay, some other issues. As far as donations to VSOs, donation of time, money, or items must be made as a representative of the SAR. So therefore, whatever organization you are volunteering for, donating money, items, whatever, they must recognize it as coming from the SAR or a member of the SAR. Now, the question comes up, if you are a member of a VFW and you're doing, say you're doing some outing for, well, I'll get to that later. The other item here is the donation of time, money, and items must not benefit the donor in any way or provide something he will use. And an example here would be if you're a member of a VFW post or you have a chapter member that's a VFW post and he contributes money to buy a new pool table that he could use. You can't report that because it is something he can use, he can benefit from. The idea is to help veterans outside the SAR. And as with most donations, you cannot receive any goods or services in exchange for the donation. That's kind of standard IRS policy. The other thing I was going to mention here, as far as being recognized as a member of the SAR, if you are doing an activity, what I tell people is, if you're wearing a hat that has SAR on it, if you're wearing a shirt that has the SAR logo on it, that's good enough to be recognized as an SAR representative. If the people you're working with know you're a member of the SAR and you're doing it for the SAR, that's good enough as well.
Scott,
Yeah.
The State Society Award, is that a flag streamer or is it just a certificate?
Just a certificate,
Okay.
I believe. I can't remember, to be honest. You might get a streamer, but I believe it's just a certificate. When transferring information from the tracker to the score sheet, sections 1 to 6 require your chapter members' information in addition to all the numbers you're entering as far as hours, mileage, things like that. And I'll show you here in a second, but we've made it real easy to transfer the totals from the spreadsheet, the tracker, into your PDF form. I just want to warn you on section 2, there are 2 subsections. Section 2A is for VA hours, which is reported or you should be able to receive from the VA for your volunteer service report. I don't know how many of you are volunteers at a VA medical center or how many of you that are aware of this, but when you volunteer, your VA facility should be recording all your hours you volunteer. And at any point during the year or at the end of the year, you can request that report and they should give it to you, and it'll have details on all the hours you volunteered for that year. And so for section 2A, that is what you're going to need for section 2A. Now, unfortunately, not all VAs are the same. Some will report things that others won't as far as being volunteer hours. One of those would be Operation Ancestor Search. If you are conducting an Operation Ancestor Search at a VA medical center, they may or may not report that as an on-site volunteer hours. You need to check with them if they're doing that or not. If they're not doing it, then in section 2B, which I'm going to get to here in a second, you'll see that's where you report Operation Ancestor Search volunteer activity. Now, as far as the tracker spreadsheet, I want to warn you, do not use cut and paste functions in the tracker. If you do that, you're going to break the link to the calculations and you will get this # REF exclamation point in your totals. If you see that appearing anywhere in your spreadsheet, that means at some point you did a cut and paste. It's easy to fix. If this pops up, you can just email me your spreadsheet, tell me what section I need to go to, and I can fix it real quick and get it back to you. For my job, I do travel. I haven't been traveling much recently, but when I'm not traveling, usually if someone emails me their spreadsheet to be fixed or have rows add to it, usually I get it back to them within a few hours. So I can do it very quick. If I'm traveling, it's going to depend on how, flights and things like that. You can use the copy and paste. So if you got some information you want to, or is going to be repeated in the report, you can use copy and paste, but do not use cut and paste. And this is the same thing in the Americanism report. For those of you who had done the Americanism report, if you use cut and paste, you're going to get that # REF exclamation point. Okay, now we're going to get to the actual score sheet and tracker itself. So when you're completing the score sheet at the end of the year, you need to put in all the information we'll be talking about here. For chapters, you need to enter your chapter president's name and the chapter membership count. So down here at the bottom, I hope you can see my cursor. It says chapter or state membership count as of January 1st of contest year. If you are a chapter, you put your chapter membership. Now, if you're not sure what that is, your state secretary or treasurer, whoever does your membership reconciliation at the end of the year, he should be able to provide you with this number, and it's for January 1st of the contest year. So for the current year we're in now, you would put down your chapter membership as of January 1st, 2024. Of all the reports I've gotten over the years, this is the most common place where people make a mistake or leave out the information. I've gotten a lot of reports that this is left blank, or they put something in there like a date. I need the number of chapter members at that on January 1st. If this is the state society report, it needs to be the number of state members in there on January 1st of the contest year. And again, you should be able to get that through reconciliation, depending on whether it's your state treasurer or your state secretary that handles that.
God,
Yes.
Yeah.
question. In Kentucky, the number of chapter members that we have on January 1st is not the true number because the reconciliation isn't done until later in the month.
Well, you just have to wait. You have to get it from your treasurer.
Right, but you said January 1st. So can we go within, once they finally do the drops, is that number then good?
Yeah, as long as you get your report in time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
okay.
I'm not saying you have to fill this out and submit it on January 1st. I'm just saying
you
you have to
go.
have your membership by January 1st.
Right.
And this is for the contest year. You should already have that number now.
Right,
Yep.
but my number on January 1st is not what was on my chapter reconciliation on January 17th because the drops happened.
Right.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Okay. The number that goes in for this one we're doing right now, it's January 1st of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
You got till December 31st to get that number. Or actually February 1st of next year, you have to get that number.
Correct, but what I'm saying is that isn't an accurate number because they haven't dropped membership, so the number will be inflated.
No, what? The state secretary, the ones I've always done it, they'll say once they drop them, they will go back and say on January 1st.
Okay.
Whatever
Thank you.
whatever your state secretary says your membership was on January 1st, that's what you use.
All right, thank you.
Then the date submitted, make sure that's the date you actually submit it and not the date that you start filling out the report.
Got one question.
Yeah.
Back on the numbers. Does junior members count in the total?
Yes.
Yeah, we have active current members, junior members.
Junior
etc.
members count. Okay, the Patriotic Outreach Award. Several years ago, the Patriotic Outreach Committee decided that to reduce on duplicate reporting and to kind of streamline the whole reporting process, they decided that they would take their information for their awards out of the Stark report. So for the Partners in Patriotism Award, that is taken out of Section 8. If you report any activities whatsoever in Section 8, you should be receiving the Partners in Patriotism Award. Reads Across America, that should be reported in Section 9A, which is decorating of veteran graves. And here's where it's really important to use the tracker. And I'll explain it when we get to Section 9A. But if you're using the tracker and submit it, you can put in there Reads Across America, and it makes it easier to identify that you actually were using Reads Across, or you were participating in Reads Across America. Honor flights, they can be reported in either Section 3 or Section 8, depending on what exactly you're doing. If you have a chapter member who's a guardian for an honor flight, that would be reported in Section 3. If you're simply supporting an honor flight at their departure or their return, that would more than likely go in Section 8. But again, it depends on exactly what it is you're doing. And I'll cover that in more detail once we get to those sections. Okay, so now we're going to get into more detail on each section. So Section 1 is VA appointments. The only thing that can be reported here are SAR representatives and deputy representatives who are appointed by the SAR at VA medical centers. No other organization can be reported here. It's important to remember that they have to be appointed by the Veterans Committee chairman. This last year, we actually had a chapter that they had a member who, for all practical purposes, was serving as a representative or deputy representative, but he had never been appointed. So I had to scramble and write a letter of appointment for him real quick. Now, another thing is this last year, the SAR currently has about 103 representatives and deputy representatives at various VA medical centers across the country. This year in the Stark reports, only 64 of those representatives and deputy representatives have reported. So I don't know if whoever's filling out the reports for the chapters was unaware that they had representatives and deputy representatives, or what happened, but it seemed like there's a breakdown in communication at the chapter level. If you are unsure if your chapter has representatives or deputy representatives appointed, you can ask at your chapter meetings, or you can check with your state Veterans Committee chairman, or you can check with me. I have records on everyone who has been appointed. And keep in mind that this is only the representatives and deputy representatives to the VAVS or CDC committee. You're not reporting the volunteers. And I had some chapters that apparently were submitting their volunteers in this section. They are not reported in this section.
Scott,
Yes.
on the membership also, I've been a rep at the York VAMC, and it's important that everybody understands you can't be a rep for different organizations. They only accept one.
Right. I'm just going about to get to that. You have to be a representative of the SAR. Because we've had,
Scott,
yes,
question. Can you both be a VAVS committee representative and a volunteer?
if you are a representative or deputy representative, you are a volunteer.
Okay. But I mean, can you count it in both places?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
That came up last night, is that there was someone who was unaware. They were a representative at their VA medical center, and they were unaware that they were also a volunteer. Just to let you know, if you're a representative, deputy representative, your organization, each VA volunteer committee has quarterly meetings, and you typically have to attend those meetings regularly. And depending on the VA medical center, if nobody from your organization attends a meeting for 3 or 4 consecutive meetings, they will drop you as a recognized organization. You don't have to have all your members there, but you have to have at least one. And a lot of the VA volunteer services committees, they send me their attendance reports and minutes. So I'm also seeing who is attending the meetings.
Scott, this is Frank. Can I make a comment, please?
Sure.
We've had 2 individuals that you have designated through my request to be a representative of the Audie Murphy facility. And over time, 2 of those individuals never completed their training. Therefore, they never got their badges, and they were never recorded as being in attendance at any of these VA meetings. So the individuals really need to take that very serious, that they are required to be at those organizational meetings, whether they're in person or by Zoom.
Yeah, a lot of these committee meetings are either held virtually or they offer a virtual option. So that's a good point, Frank. Thank you. Now, those of you who have, or if you in the future you do get representatives on these committees, in the meetings you will be asked to help the VA in providing or soliciting donations to help whatever programs they have going on at their particular facility. All these donations, whether it's money or in-kind donations, those are reportable as elsewhere in the report and in the other sections, which we'll get to here in a second. Okay, so section 1 at the top here, I have a section from the Stark tracker, and at the bottom, I have the section here of what the PDF score sheet looks like. So if you're using the tracker, which again, I strongly recommend you use, you put in the date. If you have existing representatives that are carried over from the previous year, just put January 1st, their name, the VA hospital that they're assigned to. And as far as the role in the organization, they're either going to be a representative or a deputy representative. You put that in here. If in the course of the year you have someone appointed, you put the date they are appointed and then fill in the same information as before. In every section, there's a little box like this, little shape light blue in here, that will provide all your totals. So when you transfer to the PDF score sheet, these numbers here will transfer directly into there. So number of appointments, you have a number there, you just put that in here and that'll fill it out for you. Now you do have the option, if you're just doing the PDF file, you can put your representative names in here as well. But if you got them on the tracker and you submit the tracker, that's fine as well. You don't necessarily have to do both if you're submitting both.
This is Frank again. Let me make a comment, please.
Yes.
as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a medical center serves as the hub of everything else they then support out in the clinic areas that they support. You can only have one representative, but you can have multiple deputy representatives that then are designated, like in the Dallas facility for the Denton area or things like that. So it's just trying to clarify that there's only one representative
Right,
per organization.
correct. And you brought up the clinics as well. Some clinics have volunteer programs, volunteer committee programs. You can't be appointed to a clinic, but not all clinics have volunteer committees or volunteer services. And as Frank said, if you are going to be appointed as a volunteer at a clinic, in almost every instance, your appointment has to be made at the parent facility, which will be a medical center. But you will be your appointment will be at that medical center, but you will be assigned to the clinic.
Good
Now,
point.
as long as now some of these clinics are a considerable distance away from the parent medical facility, but as long as you have an SAR member who is attending the committee meetings at that parent facility, you're covered. The person at the clinic doesn't necessarily have to go to those, but you just got to make sure someone's attending.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, volunteer hours. So in section 2A, this is the hours served for VA volunteer services. These are working hours. Travel hours to and from do not count. It's while you're actually on site. And for all instances where hours are recorded, the hours are, quote, working hours. And those are the hours you're actually performing a benefit for a veteran, or you are in the presence of the veteran you are serving. Travel time is not counted because you can count mileage. You can't count travel time and mileage, just mileage. Now, if, as I mentioned before, your VA medical center should be keeping a volunteer service record of all the hours. And so, again, during the course of the year, you can request it, or you can wait till the end of the year and request it and just get the hours then. But it's not necessary to record each day that someone volunteers at a VA medical center. You can just total them up for the year. So if you got, I'll pick on Frank here, if he volunteers 150 days in the course of a year at a medical center, you don't have to make 150 entries for every day that he was there. You can just put January 1st or then, whatever date you want, just put Frank Robaugh and put the total number of hours he did for the year. But again, it's up to you. If you want to get detailed and put in every day he was there, and some chapters, that's what they want to do, you're more than happy to do that. And because of that, for section 2A, there are 400 rows. Because I have had chapters, again, who want to put in, every time they have a chapter member volunteering, they want to put it in there. And so 400 rows seems to be the magic number so far. So the volunteer hours, again, if you're doing it on a monthly basis or for the total year, if you're doing it for a year, you can just put January 1st or whatever date. It really doesn't matter to me. The name of the volunteer, where they're serving, the total hours, and the miles they drove. That's miles to and from. It's not just one way. So to and from. In all instances, when mileage is reported, it's to and from. So at the end of the year, when you get ready to submit your score sheet, you will have total hours here and total miles here. And those are just directly transferable down here for number of hours and miles driven. Again, if you're submitting the Stark tracker, you don't have to submit all names and numbers here. And if you have a very active chapter with a lot of people doing a lot of volunteer hours, it's probably going to be really difficult to get their names on there. If you just have any sort of other Word document or Excel spreadsheet that you're using, that's fine as well. If I see a really high number here, I'm going to ask for a validation of those numbers. But usually, most chapters don't have a high number of people volunteering throughout the course of the year. You may have an individual doing a lot of hours, but not, you're not gonna have 50 chapter members necessarily doing it. Okay, section 2B, if you scroll all the way down through section A, you will see section 2B. This is where you report approved non-VA reported hours, and we're talking primarily about Operation Ancestor Search. As I said before, not all VAs will consider Operation Ancestor Search volunteering for the VA. So if they don't, this is where you report Operation Ancestor Search, but you have to get all the way through section 2A. So again, you can do this for the total of the year, or do it on a monthly basis, weekly basis, however you want to do it, again, depending on how frequently you're doing this. And again, this is hours not reported in the VA Volunteer Service Report that the VA is keeping track of. So again, section 2B, just put in like we did before, if you can do it for the total of the year, however you want to do it, it's up to you. Okay, visitations and outings.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So this past year, I stumbled upon a partnership between the U.S. National Archives and the National Park Service looking for volunteers to transcribe Revolutionary War pension documents. Does that have to go up for approval to be something considered to add to this, or is that something we should just add on our own?
It should get approval.
Okay, I'll send the information. You can help point me in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, visitations and outings. So any time you visit a veteran, whether he's in a hospital, nursing home, veterans home, and his personal home, a state veterans facility, anything like that, or taking one or more veterans on an outing, you report it in section 3. And what you're doing here is not reported in section 2, and what's reported in section 2 is not reported here. So here you need to make an entry for each occurrence, enter the date, name, veteran's name, location, hours, and miles. And here's the tricky part to the whole thing. The visit or the outing must be due to the veteran service and not a personal relationship. And the example I use is if you have a brother-in-law that's a veteran and you go fishing with him, the question you should be asking yourself, are you going fishing with him because he's your brother-in-law, or are you taking him fishing because he's a veteran? And we're going to work on the honor system here, guys. I can't police each and every instance where this may be occurring. So keep that in mind whenever you're entering with a veteran that you have a personal relationship. Are you doing it because he's a veteran or because of that personal relationship? So questions have come up about doing stuff. If you're a member of a VFW post and you're doing stuff with veterans there, got to ask yourself, are you doing it because they're a veteran, or are you doing it because they're your friend? Now, I just want to point out that this section is not limited to VA or other veterans facilities. It could be anywhere the veteran lives. An outing could be something as simple as taking a veteran, say he can't drive anymore, and so you take him to doctor's appointments, you take him to the grocery store, just to get him outside and get a little socialization. You take him for a drive in the country. Those are all outings. So, it's pretty wide open here on what an outing or a visit can be. Any questions on that? Okay, so here, this is what the tracker spreadsheet looks like. Again, date, the patriot name, so the chapter member's name, the name of the veteran. If you got multiple veterans, say your chapter does a big event where you're taking a bunch of veterans to a sporting event, and say you got a whole bunch of veterans you're taking. It's not necessary to put every veteran's name. You can just put multiple in there. If you want to put every veteran's name, you can as well. This, to be honest, this is primarily for your records. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to put the veteran's name, that's fine. Otherwise, you can just put various. The location, what you did, the hours spent at that particular outing or visitation, and the miles driven. Again, that's to and from. And again, I'll add up everything here, and you just transfer that to the PDF. Okay, personal care gifts. In this section, section 4, this is items like games, puzzles, non-perishable food items that are donated to veterans in a VA hospital, a state veterans hospital, state veterans nursing home, or other organizations whose primary clients are veterans. This is where the VSOs that meet the 2 criteria comes into play. As long as they meet those 2 criteria, that they're recognized by the VA as being a veteran service organizations and their primary clients are veterans, they qualify. So it's open to a lot of organizations here. Typical information you enter in here, the dollar value and miles are also reported. Points for donating free samples. By free samples, we're primarily talking about if you're collecting shampoo, lotion, and things like that from a hotel, those would be free samples. And those need to be reported as free samples as opposed to something that you're paying for. Other items you can report here include liquid soap, shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shaving cream, combs, playing cards, puzzles, non-perishable food items, etc. There's a lot of items you can report in here. I get a lot of questions on things that we haven't thought of before, so it'll probably fit into this section here. However, no clothing is reported here. That's reported in section 10, which we'll get to here in a minute. Okay, so here, notes up here. I suggest if you got any questions, first you read this. Anything you purchase, it's the dollar value, tax not included. For any of these monetary values you're putting in, tax is not included. If it's a free sample, and again, I'm talking about primarily something you're getting from a hotel, that for each item, it is 1/5 of a point per item. So for you get those 5 little shampoo bottles, that's 1 point. So when you enter them in, you can either separate them out. So you can put the date of the delivery or the donation, who they're coming from or who delivered it, who received it. You can mix free samples with purchased items. So if you got purchased items, you just put the total value here. If you got free samples, you just put the number, the quantity there, and the miles you drove, and it'll add up the points. If you have one person making the delivery, but they're taking donation items for other chapter members, you can put each chapter member down here, but only the person who drove the donation items or delivered the donation items claims miles. So if you have 5 chapter members contributing to this donation run, you could have 5 different rows here, but as far as miles entered, you only have 1. Does everyone understand that?
I have a question.
Sure.
If there's 4 members attending an event that all drive in the same car, is the mileage for 4 people or 1 person?
You were garbled. I couldn't understand what your question was. Could you try saying it again, or if someone else understood it, could you let me know? Ask it again.
Yeah, I'll try again. On mileage,
Yes.
if there's 4 members attending an event and they all go in the same car, how do you count the mileage?
Okay, you're back here for veterans outings.
For any event.
Okay, for mileage. This is SAR members reporting the mileage.
Correct.
If you are carpooling to any event, the driver reports the mileage. The passengers do not report mileage.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Oops. Okay, so here we are here. Okay, so I think I covered this. So only the person driving, if someone drives or rides along to help unload, he doesn't report mileage.
Is the mileage both directions?
Yes, it's to and from.
Well, okay.
Both directions.
Thank
you. Yeah. Okay, monetary donations. These can be donated again to VA facilities, state veterans hospitals, state veterans nursing homes, or other organizations whose primary clients are veterans. Again, this is opened up to VSOs that are recognized by the VA and also whose primary clients are veterans. It's a lot of opportunities here. It should be a separate entry for each donation to help keep with your records. The donations can be cash, check, gift cards, or travel vouchers. Now, for the travel vouchers, primarily we're talking about here is some VA medical centers or in metropolitan areas where they have mass transit, whether it's subways or buses. And a lot of these VA medical facilities, for their low-income veterans, they will provide them with travel vouchers so they can ride the bus or the trains for free or at a greatly reduced rate. So if you're donating to the VA a travel voucher, that would count here as well. Gift cards. I don't know about all VA medical centers, but at the ones I'm familiar with, usually around Thanksgiving and Christmas, they are asking for gift cards that they can give to low-income veterans. But they also ask for gift cards throughout the year, so those are valid as well. So here I would suggest you do it for each compatriot making the donation and the date, the compatriot making it, what it is, whether it's cash, gift cards, travel vouchers, whatever, the facility or organization receiving it, the dollar amount, and if it was delivered, the mileage, again, to and from whoever does the driving. If there are no questions, I'll move on. Okay, publication donations. Again, it's the same standard thing of who can receive this. The donations can be books, magazines, DVDs, movie DVDs, or music CDs. Now, one thing you need to make sure of before you deliver these items is whoever you're taking this to, they will receive it. A lot of VA medical centers in the past would accept used books and magazines. Even in the good old days when they accepted magazines, they did not want magazines more than 6 months old. The magazines had to be less than 6 months old. When COVID started, a lot of the VA medical centers that I'm familiar with, they would not accept used books and they would not accept magazines. So they would only accept new books. Some VA medical centers now are accepting used books. I am not aware of any VA medical center right now that is accepting magazines. There may be some out there that I'm not aware of. Again, if you're making any of these donations, taxes are not included in the dollar amount you'll make. And I just want to add something too. If you're donating movies, check with whoever it is, particularly if it's a VA medical center, check with them first on what they will accept. The VA medical centers that I'm familiar with, they do not want movies that are portraying violence or could be stressful. These VA medical centers, a lot of their patients have PTSD, and they do not want them watching a movie that could escalate them or trigger an episode. So make sure, again, if you're doing it to a medical facility, check with them on what they will and will not accept. Other organizations, they may not have that issue, so they would be able to accept any type of movie or more, a wider range of movies, I'll say, wider genre of movies. And just use your common sense here. If you got dirty, musty, water damaged, or smoke smelling books or magazines, just don't donate them. It's just kind of a bad reflection on the SAR. Make sure you're delivering good quality items to whatever facility you're delivering them to. Any questions on this?
Yeah, Scott, my question was about receipt.
No, you muted yourself there.
My question was, I make donations to the Veterans Clinic down, say, in Texas City. Magazines and whatnot. They don't provide receipts. Do I need to make out a receipt for them to sign? Or
yeah, I would make it it's a VA clinic.
Yeah, VA clinic.
Wow, I'm really surprised. I've not come across a VA medical facility of any kind that did not have forms to fill out.
Yeah, I just take them in and donate the magazines to them, and they take them.
Okay. Yeah, just make up your own form and just have them sign it, and here you go. Again, you don't have to submit, when you submit your reports, you don't have to submit that donation slip or report with it, but just keep it in case it's asked for. All the VA medical facilities I'm familiar with, when you make a donation, you have to fill out a donation form, and then they send you, it could be several weeks or a month later, they send you confirmation of that donation. You're muted again, sorry.
I'll check with them next time I do it.
Yeah. But what I do is I have a copy I scanned it in for those donation forms, and I keep it, so I fill it out before I get there. And so it's a much quicker transition or donation process. Okay, so here is where you report or you enter in the Stark tracker. For new items, it's 1 point per dollar purchase. Again, no tax included. If it's a used item, it's 1 point per item. And again, you can mix these items as far as new and used and report them on one line if you want. So if you make one donation run, if it's one compatriot, you just want to report here, the facility receiving it, the dollar value for new items, the number of used items, and the mileage he drove. Again, if he's taking an accumulation of items that have been donated by various members, my suggestion is you put a line in here for each chapter member who donated, so you can keep track for the Service to Veterans Medal. It's just kind of bookkeeping on your end to help you keep track of Service to Veterans points for these guys. Any question on this? Okay, section 7. Of all the years I have been receiving the Stark reports, this is the least reported activity across the board for all the years, for all the chapters. Approximately 7% of chapters who are submitting Stark reports will report activity in this area. And it's kind of sad in a way that we're not doing more for our wounded warriors. But this program, to participate in it, the SAR has an SAR Wounded Warrior Challenge coin and a certificate. So to qualify in this section, you have to present the SAR Wounded Warrior Challenge coin and the certificate to a wounded warrior. I think there's 2 issues why this is the lowest reported section. I think a lot of chapters are unaware of this. And the other issue is, I think, the cost associated with it. I checked the SAR website yesterday before I did the first training session, and the cost for the full set is still $16.50 for the challenge coin and the certificate. A lot of people seeing that as being kind of expensive, but if you look at the cost of just about every SAR medal we have, this is cheap compared to what the cost of a medal would be. But you can get these from SAR merchandise. If you're presenting a Wounded Warrior Challenge coin, you do not report it as a visit in section 3. Everything associated with the Wounded Warrior coin presentation is reported in this section here. Now, I want to point out, because this is a question that frequently comes up, the recipient of this coin does not have to have a Purple Heart. The only requirement is they were injured in the line of duty. And so, by way of example, if you have a veteran who was in the National Guard and he was driving from point A to point B during his service as the National Guard, and he is in an automobile accident and gets a serious injury, he would qualify for receiving this award. Now, obviously, if they have a Purple Heart, they are also eligible, but the Purple Heart is not required. So here is the section. The date you present it, the name of the recipient, the location where it was, the number of coins purchased, So sometimes if you're doing multiples, you could be doing a whole bunch of veteran presentations. If you want, you can put all their names here together, and therefore, say you're presenting 20 coins, you would put 20 purchased here. For each chapter member you have that's in business attire, you would put their hours here. And if they're in colonial attire, you would put their hours here. And then miles driven. And again, if they're carpooling, it's only the driver gets to report the points there.
Question.
Yep.
Simply, if the individual veteran has designated as a disabled veteran, that qualifies, correct?
Definitely. Anybody
you.
who's categorized as a DAV or disabled veteran, they qualify as well.
Scott,
it doesn't have to be a physical injury.
Scott,
that was my basis for my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Scott, where you have a number of or the business attire and hours.
Yes.
If these were presented at a SAR meeting, would that be all of the members that were there in business attire?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some chapters that have a special veterans supper, and they will invite various veterans from their organization, and they will have, they'll invite a bunch of wounded warriors, and they will, do 5, 10, 15, sometimes more presentations at that supper. Very good. Thank you, Terry. Anybody who's in attendance there, you can report. But again, it's only the hours you're actually there engaging with the veteran. If you're having a supper, the time spent setting up, the time spent cleaning up, you don't report. It's only actually while you're engaging with the veterans. Okay, Section 8. And again, Section 8, any activity reported in Section 8 automatically qualifies you for the Partners in Patriotism Award. Now, to be an activity reported in this section, it must be historic or patriotic in nature. Now, that may seem a little bit restrictive, but if you really think about it, there's a lot of things that can be considered patriotic and or historic. Make an entry for each event and put down the compatriots' names, hours, etc., like you have before. The hours you put here should be the duration of the event. And I'll explain here when we put on the score sheet, I'll explain what I mean by that. Not the collective total for all the individuals. And as I just said, any entry in this section qualifies for Partners in Patriotism Award. Okay, so I'll explain this. Say you have a Veterans Day event and you have 5 members show up. You can do one of two things. You can put each chapter member a separate line. So say you're going that approach. You got Joe Smith was there on November 11th. Put Joe Smith, you say Veterans Day event, where it was, and he's in business attire. So you're doing a single compatriot. Number of compatriots is 1. He was there for 1 hour. So you put 1 hour here. If he was in colonial attire, you'd put 1 here, 1 hour there. He drove himself, you put in the miles. You do that. If you're separating each one of them out separately, each one, the number of compatriots will be 1, whether they're wearing business attire, colonial attire. And if it's a 1 hour event, you put 1 here. Okay, now here's where it gets a little tricky. If you're going to put all 5 compatriots on the same line, which you can do, but again, if you're wanting to keep track of service to veterans points, this is going to make it more difficult, but it's up to you on how you do it. You can put all 5 chapter members' names here. You put the event, location, number of compatriots. If you're putting 5 people on one line, you put 5 here. The hours is the duration of the event, so it's still 1 hour. If you have 5 compatriots there for 1 hour, do not put 5 here. The way the score sheet will handle this is If you put a 5 for the number of compatriots, 5 for the hours, it'll think you had 5 compatriots there that were there for 5 hours, and you're going to get credit for a total of 25 hours. So I recommend you actually do a separate line for each chapter member. That's what I do for our chapter. And again, if you're tracking service to veterans medal points, it's a lot easier to do it that way.
Scott,
Yes.
question. On March 29th, it's Vietnam Veterans Day, and we're at the National Cemetery in Houston. We're having an event. Is this the area that would go in?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you know, like I said, it's any event with a veterans organization. It's not limited to Memorial Day or Veterans Day or Wreaths Across America. Anything you do, you know, if you have a dedication of a Vietnam memorial or any war memorial that's just thrown on an arbitrary date, that would be reportable here as well. Someone got a question?
Yes. I attended another organization, MOA, the Military Officers of America Association meeting. And I attended because we had an SAR event there and gave a talk and everything. But because I'm also the person that gets Vietnam War veterans pins and fact sheets, we presented the pins and fact sheets to about 30 people there. Does that count?
Okay, you're kind of breaking up a little bit on me, but what I understood you say was you are at an event and you are giving the Vietnam veteran pins to Vietnam veterans?
Yeah.
But what is the event? I didn't catch that.
It was the Military Officers of America Association. It was one of their meetings.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's reportable.
Okay.
I thought of something else and I forgot it now, but hopefully I'll remember here in a minute. Okay, any other questions about this section? Oh, I remember what it was. Meetings. If you are organizing an event, the time you spent and the mileage you have for meetings, you don't report here. Again, this is while you are in the presence of or directly supporting veterans. So like for Wreaths Across America, if you're having planning meetings, things like that, those hours are not reportable.
Okay, so Scott, for
Yeah.
this, you don't need to name the veterans organization that you're working with for the event.
No, well, it depends on
Because
what
in Partners in Patriotism, you used to have to name the veterans organization specifically.
Right.
And in here, there's no place for the approved veterans organization that you're doing this with.
You can put it in the event. You could put Veterans Day with VFW Post 109.
That's very small font.
No, it'll fit in, it'll fill. And what you'll have
So
to do, this is an Excel spreadsheet. If I was to enter something in here, real long text, you won't be able to read all of it as it sits there. But if I click on that cell up in the top, you'll be able to read the whole thing.
Okay, so you put the event and the name of the veterans organization you're doing it with, because that was always a requirement for the partnership and patriotism. You had to specifically name the organization.
Yeah, you can do that, but to be honest, you know, if I'm doing a lot of these events, say like Memorial Day, Veterans Day, there's a whole bunch of veterans organizations there we're working with.
Okay, well, will the people who determine the partners and patriotism certificate, will they understand that?
Yes.
If you don't put the name of the specific organization?
Yes.
Okay.
I work with them closely. They will be fine with that. Any other questions? Okay, decorating veterans' graves and attendance at funerals. As far as in section 9A, as far as decorations, those could be flags, wreaths, whatever else may constitute being a decoration placed on veterans' graves, and removing the decorations. So putting them on and taking them off, you can report that. Make an entry for each occurrence. The compatriot names, the veteran name is optional. If you're going out, say for Memorial Day or Veterans Day, and you're putting 500 flags out on graves, we're not expecting you to record and enter every veteran's name. You can just put multiple or various. Location, if you're purchasing new decorations, you report the dollar value, and then the hours you're actually engaged in that activity. Now, again, speaking on business attire, that's going to depend on the situation. So like last night when I got to this section, I told the guys, if you're putting flags on the graves of veterans for Independence Day and you're doing this in Southern Alabama, we're not expecting you to be out there in a sport coat and tie or anything like that. You know, you could be in shorts and a nice, comfortable shirt. It's basically whatever is appropriate for that situation. Wreaths Across America. If this is a Wreaths Across America decoration or event under the name of veterans, just put Wreaths Across America. That will help us identify it as being a Wreaths Across America event. Okay, so here is the spreadsheet. You enter the date when you did it. And again, depending on what's going on, you may want to make a separate line entry for every chapter member that's doing it so you can keep track of his service to veterans points. The name of the veterans is optional. Again, you know, if you got just a few graves you're marking, you can put down the names pretty easily. Or if you're doing a whole bunch of them, just put various. The location, the purchase price. Now, the purchase price is for new decorations only. If your chapter recycles flags, if you put out flags, say for Memorial Day, and then after Memorial Day, you go and you pull them out and you keep them and you put them out the next year, you can only report the purchase of those flags once. When you reuse them, you can't report the purchase price. Now, if you purchase new flags to add to the collection, you can report the new flags, but the ones you've used previously, you cannot report the purchase price. We are reporting the hours spent placing the decorations or flags or whatever you're putting out there. It's no longer the number of flags or number of wreaths. And of course, then the miles driven. Now, what people have asked, what constitutes putting out a decoration? It has to be there for a reasonable amount of time. So if you're doing, say, Veterans Day or Memorial Day, something like that, most people are putting those decorations and flags out a day or two at least before those days, and then they're recovering them at least one day after or multiple days after. That would be a reasonable amount of time. If you were in a location where, say, the morning of Veterans Day, you have a bunch of people coming out and placing flags on the graves, that is acceptable as well. But what is not acceptable is if you have a ceremony, say on Memorial Day, and during the ceremony you present a wreath or a flag. The ceremony lasts an hour, the ceremony is over, you grab your wreath and flag and leave. That does not constitute a reasonable period of time for that decoration. The decorations really need to be there for an extended period of time for the day they are meant to be honoring that veteran. If there's any confusion or questions on that, you can contact me and I will respond to your answers with that. But keep in mind, the intent here is to have the decoration and flags on the day, on the veteran graves for the date or event or whatever that they're being recognized for. And again, going and picking these up afterwards, it's the same thing. The hours spent and miles driven are reportable. So if you go back out there to recover your flags, it doesn't have to be the same people. But recovering the flags and decorations is reportable as well.
Time driving to and from is reportable, right?
Driving to and from. Every time you see miles, it's driving to and from.
Okay. So for the chapter that does the Wreaths Across America, you would put WAA under the names of the veterans and then the cemetery?
Yeah. Or you put WAA or Wreaths Across America. And then for location, you just put the cemetery. And then of course,
okay.
if your chapter only sponsorees, they don't put any out, then you can fill all this out and you would have what the dollar value was. And for hours, you just have 0, and miles, you'd have 0. If you don't purchase wreaths, but you go out and help lay them out, for here, you would have 0, but you would have hours and miles. If you do both, if you sponsor wreaths and lay out wreaths, then obviously you'd have dollar value here and hours and drive miles.
The titles might be improved a little bit next year.
How so?
Well, for names of veterans, if you put Wreaths Across America, that's an option rather than the names of the veteran.
Yeah.
That probably needs to be clarified a little more.
Okay. Thank you for that input.
It's not self-explanatory.
Yeah. Okay, any other
Scott.
questions?
Yes, sir. I place flags on the veterans' graves because they're not in a single section. Would we count those hours as well as actually placing the wreaths on that given day?
On any given day, if you're placing wreaths, flags, any decoration, the time you spend doing that is reportable.
Okay, thank you.
If I understood your question correctly, yeah. And again, when you pick them up afterwards, if you retrieve them afterwards, that's reportable as well. Okay, attendance at funerals is section 9B. For any one veteran, you can only count attendance at either the visitation, the funeral service, or the burial. Now, the question has come up about memorial services. We're going to consider those the same as a funeral. So if you go to the visitation, the funeral service, and the burial, you can only report one of them. You're more than welcome to attend all three, but you can only report one of them. Make an entry for each occurrence. And again, I would recommend, if you have multiple chapter members attending, I would recommend you make a line for each chapter member, because again, it helps with service to veterans medal points accumulation. If he is killed in the line of duty, identify that. This is not killed in action. This is killed in the line of duty. There's a difference there that I hope everyone understands. If you don't, I can explain it. The roles you can report are as follows. Readers, if you have anybody that's reading scripture, poems, reading anything as part of the service, that is reportable here. Any sort of dedications or buglers can be reported. If you have a rifle team salute, any chapter member participating in the rifle salute, they can report that. Flag folding, pallbearer or honorary pallbearer, that is reportable. Just attending it, if you just attend it in business attire or colonial attire, that is reportable as well. Now, the question came up last night is if you have a color guard there.
Yes.
I would consider the color guard, just use the code for a rifle team. When we created the report in its current form, when we went through medals and awards for approval, the agreement was made that we would not change the report for 3 years. So that's why we're kind of hesitant to make this, because we'd have to go back to medals and awards, and they're saying you're changing it. But I would say just if you have a color guard there, just report as being part of the rifle team.
Yeah.
Now, here is an important distinguish, or where this section is different from every other section. I previously talked about you had to be recognized as an SAR member. That is not required for this section. The reason being is if you're in a VFW post or Vietnam Veterans Post, and you have a friend in the same post who passed away, we're not going to make you choose on whether you're representing the SAR or your VFW post. The primary goal is that you're paying your respects and honoring the veteran. So you do not have to be representing the SAR. You do not have to have SAR logos, hats, or whatever. You can be wearing your VFW post hat or insignia there.
Yeah. That was a very important comment concerning the rifle team salute, because it's not intuitively obvious that that's color guard also.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's something that when we did the report, no chapter had ever reported that before, so it wasn't on our radar. And to be honest, with this current report form, we've discovered there are a lot of SAR members who are out there on rifle teams for the VA. And so they're out there, doing spending a lot of hours, a lot of time out there doing rifle salutes for veteran funerals, which we weren't picking up before.
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
On Bugler, I have a member who belongs to a association of Buglers Across America, I think it's called. And he attends a lot of funerals and plays a bugle and whatnot. Can I count him, even though he's in another organization?
Yes.
But he's still an SAR member.
If he's there, like I just said, we're not holding that requirement for being a member of the SAR. Because as I just mentioned here, we have a lot of SAR members that are funeral details, and they're doing this through the VA or through their VFW post or something like that. So, as I said, the note down here, this is the exception to the SAR recognition. As long as they are an SAR member, you can report it.
Okay, I have not been reporting those in the past. So it's good to know.
That's one of the main reasons we're doing this training. It's to make sure everyone is reporting everything they could be reporting. Okay, so if you got a funeral, again, if it's an individual funeral for one veteran and you have multiple chapter members going, I would recommend doing a line for each chapter member attending, simply because, again, for the Service to Veterans Medal. If you have a chapter member who is on a funeral detail and he is doing multiple funerals in a day, and he's out there multiple days a week or multiple days a month, you are welcome to do a summary. If you just want to do an annual summary for what he did that entire year, you're welcome to do that. Some VA medical centers, if he is on a VA organized funeral detail, some VA medical centers will record those hours. And so you can make the distinction on whether you want to report them here or if you want to report them on the section 2. So if they're doing multiple ones, obviously we're not expecting you to record every veteran's name. You just put multiple here, indicate whether they're killed in the line of duty or not. Now, if they're doing multiples and some are or some aren't, then you're going to need to separate them out. You can't, if he does 8 funerals in one day and only one of them was killed in the line of duty, if you click yes here, it's going to assume all 8 of those were killed in the line of duty, which would give you a false accumulation of points. Now, the role in the funeral, there are codes up here. And again, for a color guard, I would just use RI for rifle team, stick that in there. Number of funerals, business attire or colonial, so it'd be B or C. Attendance hours. Now, for those who are on funeral details, this is an important point to get across. The typical funeral detail, they could be out there all day or the better part of a day. So what typically happens if it's a national cemetery The funeral services are pretty much everyone I'm familiar with are limited to 30 minutes. So the funeral detail, some only show up for the portion of the funeral that they're going to be providing the service. A lot of times it's at the very beginning, so they're only there 5 minutes. Then they leave to get ready for the next one, or they may be there for the full 30 minutes. When that funeral's over, they go back either to their vehicles or back to an office or shelter or something and sit and wait for the next funeral. For hours, they only report the hours they are providing a service for that funeral. When they are not actively engaged in a funeral, those hours do not count. So if they're out there 8 hours and they participate in 4 funerals and each funeral is half an hour, they report 2 hours, not 8 hours. So the miles driven, again, is to and from. So any questions on this? This one gets a little tricky sometimes. So again, if you want to do, if you got a compatriots on a funeral detail, you can do this for the entire year. But again, if it's a mixed of killed in the line of duty and not, you really need to separate them out. And I would recommend that you not wait till the end of the year. If you have a chapter member on a funeral detail, do not wait till the end of the year to start figuring this out. Get reports from them regularly on what they're doing so you can fill this in as accurately as you can. There's a lot of potential points and recognition that can be achieved here.
Can I ask a question, Scott?
Yeah.
Would a chaplain for a VSO who's also a member of the SAR count?
Yes.
For the reading, dedication, etc.?
Yes. As long as he is a SAR member.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, I want to back up on something here. I going back to the VA volunteer hours. Because hopefully this is something that most people don't have to have this explained to them, but oddly the question has come up. We have SAR members who are physicians at VA medical centers. They are an employee of the medical center. They are not volunteers. You cannot report their time they spend at the VA medical center because they are being paid. So hopefully that's most people understand that, but oddly enough, I have been asked that question a couple of times. So I meant to mention that earlier, but skipped it. But again, for veteran funerals, as long as they are an SAR member, I don't care, or the Veterans Committee doesn't care what organization they are attending through. The only requirements, they're an SAR member. And I assume many of you, I'm not sure how many have received a notification for a POW MIA whose remains were recently identified, and there's going to be a reinterment ceremony in your area. That is reported here. That would be killed in the line of duty. And the reason it's being included here is at the time, as an unknown burial, they did not get an adequate funeral. And so even though they were buried before, this is their funeral. So any role of support you provide in that is reportable here as well. Okay, section 10, we're on the downhill slide here. The donation of new or used men's or women's clothing, and this would include children's clothing because a lot of facilities, veterans facilities or organizations will accept children's clothing for giving to low-income families, low-income veterans families. New clothing is based on the price paid, and the receipt, it says it's required, just hang on to it. You don't have to submit it. If you want to, you can, but just hang on to it in case there are any questions. Donated items should be relatively new. We have here 30 days within purchase. The value of used clothing is 1/3 of the original purchase price. Now, if you're like me, you're not going to remember what you paid for a particular article of clothing 5 years ago, whatever. Just do your best, due diligence on estimating what the purchase price would have been when you bought it and use that. Again, we're working on the honor system here. Donations to Goodwill, the Salvation Army are not reportable because once you donate it to them, you cannot clearly identify whether it is going to a veteran or not. Taxes paid for new clothing are not included in the dollar value. Now, if you're donating, as some guys were mentioning earlier, if you're donating to a VA or state veterans hospital, things like that, I am not aware of any VA medical center that is accepting used clothing. All the ones I'm familiar with stopped that at least 6 years ago, well before COVID even started. If you had one that continued on more recently, you were lucky. There are state veterans hospitals that will accept used clothing. So look around. There are organizations that will accept used clothing. Vietnam Veterans Association is an organization that will accept used clothing. So check around, hunt in your area for, if you have used clothing you want to donate, look around for those organizations. They will take it. Now, the question came up last night. If you're donating to, say, Vietnam veterans, they will come and pick up at your door. And so the question was, how are you representing the SAR? How is the SAR being represented? There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can either, I assume if you're doing that, you can get online and tell Vietnam veterans you're going to be making a donation. When you do that, just somewhere in there, by your name, put Sons of the American Revolution, something like that on there. Or when you leave the clothes out on your doorstep at the end of your driveway, just put a little sign on there, a piece of paper, and tape it to the bag. It says, donated courtesy of the Sons of the American Revolution, something like that. It's not a big ordeal to do that. So any of that would be acceptable as representing the SAR. Any questions so far on that? Okay, so there are two sections here. 10A and 10B are combined. As with a lot of the other donations, you can mix new clothing and used clothing. So if you're delivering a combination new and used clothing, you just put the dollar amount here for new and the original purchase price as best you can estimate it for the used clothing. If you have a compatriot that's again doing a combined donation, I would recommend you separate out all the people who have contributed to that particular donation run, but only the person making the delivery to and from can report the mileage. Any questions on this?
I have one on an organization. I just received a postcard today from American Vets National Service Foundation. I never heard of it before. Want donation of used clothing. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Okay, I can tell you when the VA used to list on the webpage each and every VSO, I was astonished at some of those organizations. I mean, there are a lot of VSOs out there that would blow your mind that they even exist. I mean, there was one that was Disabled Veterans Music Band, stuff like that. So I would not be surprised that that organization exists. If you got a question about it, I would go to that link that I had earlier for the VA and see if they are a VSO recognized by the VA. But with a name like that, there's a good chance you could misspell it. So if you have trouble with them, I think I still got the old list that the VA had, and I can look at that as well and see if they're on there as well. But there's probably at least 60 organizations that the VA recognizes as veteran service organizations. It's really amazing. But you may have to do a little research on them, but my guess is they probably would qualify. Okay, section 11. This is new or used but working items, TVs, computers, appliances. And again, this can go to medical centers, veterans hospitals, veteran nursing homes, or other organizations that are VSOs. Again, as with a lot of these donations, check with them on what they will receive. You don't want to pull up to one of these organizations and say, hey, I got this treadmill I want to donate. If they didn't solicit a treadmill, you know, they're probably going to scratch their heads and say, well, we really can't accept that. As with used clothing, new items should be donated within 30 days of purchase. Any used items, make sure they work. We don't want these facilities to look at the SAR as an organization that drops off items that are unusable or don't work. And again, it'll be 1/3 of the original purchase price. Again, do your best judgment to come up with what that price should be. Just be reasonable. Receipts are required for all donations. Just hang on to them because, again, chapters are asked to provide validation or confirmation of some of the donations they made. Again, taxes paid are not to be included. So again, a lot of times, particularly VA hospitals, if you have a member that's on the VA as a representative, deputy representative on the VA volunteer committee, a lot of times the VA will work with other veteran organizations and they will receive a request for this other organization that say we need a treadmill or we need TVs or we need video players, things like that. And they will do it through the VA. And that's why it's important to have representation at the VA, because then by having that representation, you can let your chapters know and they can get that TV or they can get that appliance or whatever that's been requested through the VA. That would all be reportable in this section here. And oddly enough, a couple of years ago, we did have a request from the VA for a treadmill, and one of my chapter members had a used one that he was more than happy to part with. That's why I used the treadmill example. Okay, so here, now there is a section A and B for this one. So section A is entirely for new items, just a description of the goods, whoever's making the donation. Section B is the used ones, original purchase price, facility, description goods. That should be fairly straightforward. Okay, so we're basically come to the end. Here are a lot of useful links. And again, this presentation is on the Veterans Committee webpage. If you go to the bottom, you will find this presentation as the USS Stark Memorial Overview 2024, and you will be able to get all these links. So I recommend, if you have not been to the Veterans Committee webpage, that you go there. There are several useful resources for you. If you want information or want to purchase a Wounded Warrior coin certificate, this is the link to the SAR merchandise. If you want more information on Operation Ancestor Search, this is the link to that committee. If you don't have an Operation Ancestor Search program for your chapter, or it got discontinued because of COVID and you're wanting to restart it, by all means, please go to this committee. Stephen Miller, who is actually participating in this meeting or this training right now, he is the committee chairman for Operation Ancestor Search, and he will be more than happy to work with you in either resurrecting a program or getting a new one started. The Patriotic Outreach Committee, this is the link to their webpage on the national website. And again, there's a lot of information there as well as what their programs are and participate in those programs. So any questions? I'll go to the chat here. You guys can think of your questions. Okay. Okay. We did it fast. Well, this is okay. So we can engage folks. Okay, Ed, are you still on?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you ask your question?
I did. Do you want me to ask it again?
Did I already answer it?
I don't know. I'm sitting there looking and trying to get back up. The question was relatively simple. I've done this in the past.
Uh-huh.
And it's very fulfilling for the people that are doing it, but it's not real fun for the people that have to fill out the stock report. And all I'm really trying to do, and I don't do that anymore, but I'm trying to help the other people. I'm trying to find out what events qualify so we can get people to go to those events, and to the information needed. If we can get a sheet of the rules for it, then that would help us solve all those problems.
Well, as far as the event, I thought we already explained that. If it's a
Yeah, you do, but it's over a long period of time, and I'm just trying to get a little short sheet and not explaining it, but being able to pass it along to others.
okay, on the Veterans Committee webpage, there is, I can't remember what it's titled, but it's something down there about starting up a veterans service to veterans program. There is a resource there on the veterans page. I'll try to circle back to that after I answer all these questions. I'll pull up
Okay.
this committee webpage
That'll work.
and kind of give you there. So that pretty much answer your question there.
Well, if it does on that page on the,
Okay.
then that works for
yeah.
me.
A common problem chapters have is getting their chapter members to report that they did something. So, you know, that's kind of key to make your chapter members know, to whoever's keeping track of the scoring, to let them know when they do an event on what they did. Okay. Okay, if you're talking about
Get something that says that follows the KISS rule, keep it simple. That would make a whole lot of difference in getting people interested in doing something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the one I'm talking about would probably be a good resource for you.
Yeah.
Okay, here in Spokane, we collect unserviceable flags from the VA drop boxes. No, basically you're doing flag retirement services. If you do it with veterans, then that could be considered an outing. If it's just the SAR guys getting a bunch of flags and retiring them, then no, that's not reported, because you're not interacting or providing a benefit to veterans. But if you kind of make a big ceremony out of it, and you invite, you know, veterans just to attend, or if you invite the VFW or American Legion, things like that, then yes, it would be reportable.
Well, it's a good thing. We just need to be able to market it properly and record it easily.
Yeah. Can the cost of the medal and certificate count as dollars spent? Which particular medals are we talking about here?
Any medal is okay. It is a reflection that you've done something well, and it's not the type of medal.
Yeah.
It's that you got one.
If you're giving it to a veteran who is not an SAR member, then I'd say yes. Wounded warriors, yeah, that's all reportable in there, the cost of a wounded warrior. If it's a wounded warrior challenge coin, yes. That would be reported in section 7. If it's anything else, I would put it in probably section, trying to think now which one it would be. Probably in section 3, I think it is. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember. We have an Armed Forces Torchlight Parade. We tow our SA parade in March. Yep, that would count. You're participating with another veterans organization, and you're being recognized. Does an SAR battle commemoration event, if you invite other veteran organizations to attend, then yes. But if it's say like the typical SAR national event where I want to pick on Kings Mountain here. As far as I'm aware, there's been no recruitment or collaboration with a veterans organization, so that would not count. But say for some reason somebody got a bus load of veterans from a nursing home and brought them out to Kings Mountain, then yes, it would.
Yeah. At Yorktown, they do have veterans participating, veteran groups participating in the battlefield commemoration.
Yeah, now here's a key thing you brought up about Yorktown. As I understand it, there are French active duty military that participate in that, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, those are service members of an allied country.
Mm-hmm.
So their presence alone would qualify.
Also, at Yorktown, there's a French military cemetery in which there is a separate wreath laying. That would probably also count also.
Do the wreaths stay?
Yes, they do.
Okay, if the wreaths stay, then yes. But if it's like a lot of SAR ceremonies where the wreath is presented and after the ceremony everyone grabs them and goes home, then no.
Oh, they stay.
Okay. Okay. Good. All the veterans thrift stores that I'm aware of would qualify. There was an organization that, unfortunately, they no longer do this, but I'm sure there are other ones out there that they would accept used clothing. And what they did is if the VA Medical Center had a veteran who came there who was homeless or low income, they would give them a voucher and they could take that voucher to this organization and they would give them whatever clothing or home items they needed. So look for those organizations that may be doing that. Because they're more than happy to get used clothing or a lot of these items that you have difficulty getting other organizations to take. Oops. Yeah, so yeah, that'd be good. I mean, just being a veterans thrift store is good enough, but if it's run by vets, that's as good as well. I've recently stood up a veteran-friendly congregation at my church. Okay, as far as the prep work and the meetings and all that, that's not reportable. It's only going to be the actual interaction with the veterans or while you're supporting a veteran. So let me read this again. Yeah, so while you're there at the service, you could count that, the hours of the actual service. If it's veteran friendly, and you're going out and say you have homebound veterans or veterans who cannot drive and you are driving them to this veteran friendly congregation, that could be reported as an outing. So the details here, there's various aspects or levels here that could be reported. We're supporting our local VSO with donations of food and money for veterans. Yeah, that's all reportable. The money would be in section 5 and the food would be in section 3, I believe, if I remember right. Okay. Okay, yeah. Gary, are you still on?
There's a lot of Garys. I'm Gary Smith. I'm
Gary Hoyt.
He shows.
Okay, well, I think the point Gary is making here is there are a lot of things you can report on Americanism. Things like I mentioned, Kings Mountain. If you look at the SAR historic sites and celebrations that they recognize, there's a long list of things that we recognize. Those are reportable on Americanism. Those aren't necessarily reportable per se on the Stark report, unless, as I mentioned earlier, you turn it into a veterans outing. So I think that's the distinguishment here he's making or wanting to bring out. Okay. I need to quit doing that. I have downloaded the 2024 tools. If they need an update, will we receive an email to read? Yes. If we discover there's a bug or something in the Stark spreadsheet or anything else, it'll be corrected, and then once the new spreadsheet has been posted on the web page, an announcement will be going out. Depending on what that is, if it's easy to fix, I could just have you send me your spreadsheet and fix it, or if it's a major thing, we'd probably ask you to transfer the information you've reported over. And again, if you do that, if you are proficient at Excel, it's not that big a deal. But remember, you have to copy and paste. Do not cut and paste, or you will mess up the calculation links and you'll get that error. But hopefully we don't have any errors this year. I think the spreadsheet, the Starker tracker has been used enough years now that we should have all those bugs out, but never say never. Okay, let me see. Okay, the URL for the download. If you go to the SAR website, and I assume you are registered as a member to log on to the SAR website, you will have to go to the SAR website. You will have to log on to the SAR website. Then at the main banner or main menu at the top, you will see members. You click on members and you get a drop-down list. You go to forms and manuals. You click on forms and manuals, and then there's a big long list. And down near the bottom of that list, you will see it'll say Stark Activities Tracker 2024. That will give you the tracker, and USS Memorial score sheet. I think it says PDF. That'll be the PDF. If you have any issues finding it or downloading it, your first resource should be your State Veterans Committee chairman. If you don't have a State Veterans Committee chairman, or he is unable to help you, contact me and I will get them to you. Oops. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? If you will, and as I said, this presentation is on the web page right now. If you go there, let me stop sharing this. I'll pull up the web page and show you where to go once I get it up. I know how to spell SAR. Okay. So can everyone see? You should be seeing my web page coming up here. Just don't see my secret identity here. Okay, once you log in, this is what you will see. So to get the download of the files, the reports, you go to members, click on forms and manuals. And then here's the big long list. You scroll down here, USS Stark Memorial Award scoring sheet. That is the PDF report. USS Stark Activities Tracker. That is the Excel spreadsheet. You click on the web link and it'll take you there. And then you can go up here, click on that, and you can download. Let me just go back here. the Veterans Committee webpage, you go to members again, go to committees. And V for veterans. Just make sure you go to Veterans Committee. Veterans Recognition Committee is a different committee. Go to Veterans Committee, click on the web page. There's a lot of useful information here. If you're unfamiliar with it, information on the Westmoreland Award, Service to Veterans Medal, what's required there. Here is where committee resources are. So you can also get the score sheet and the tracker downloaded from here. But what it's going to do, it's going to take you back to where we just were. So however you want to do it. Now, the question was asked about what qualifies or how to get people involved. The first thing I'm going to have here is a list of different events you could do that would qualify for Stark reporting. Here's a list of annual celebrations for the founding of the various branches of the military. Here are significant milestone events coming up. So for 2024, the 80th anniversary of D-Day is coming up on June 6th. The 35th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall is coming up on November 9th. Here's some of the events we have so far for 2025. The intent of this is if you go to, and this will be updated regularly. So if you go to it, the intent here is that this list will give you enough time that you're not blindsided by one of these significant events popping up on you. You have enough time to either plan an event yourself or to get in touch with other veteran organizations and collaborate or support their event. So again, there's a lot of events on here that you could look at. Okay, the sheet I'm looking for, actually, I'm not seeing it on here right now. I wonder if it was taken off. Okay, Ed, you sent me your email, right? So I'll
send you my email, yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you an email with what we talked about here because it used to be on this list, but I'm not seeing it here anymore. But it was basically an outline of how to get service to veterans programs started in your chapter. Okay.
Send it again.
Gold Star families. Yeah, they would qualify depending on what you're doing with them. I mean, if you're doing a monument dedication, things like that. Did I answer all the questions that were submitted through chat? Okay, so this is about a little bit longer than we were last night. Are there any questions about anything related to the Stark report? We got another new chat here. Okay, well, thank you for the kind words, everybody. Hopefully this helps with the Stark report. You know, we want to get more chapters reporting. As I said, we had 218 reports. There are somewhere around 550 to 580 chapters in the SAR, depending on how you talk to. So we'd like to get a lot more chapters submitting that report because the more reports we get, the more information we have to work with, so we know how we're doing in our service to veterans programs. If there are no other questions, I'll give you the rest of your evening back. If you have any questions, you can email me. You can email your Service to Veterans Committee chairman, because we have a lot of good Service to Veterans Committee chairmen out there now, and hopefully you know who he is and you're using him as a resource. So they should be your first resource in any questions. And it's probably best to go through your Service to Veterans state chairman, because you may not be the only chapter in your state society that has that question. And so if he's able to answer it or get the answer from me, he can distribute it to all the chapters in your society. So Stephen Miller, you want to give any promos for Operation Ancestor Search?
Yeah, the only thing I ask is that the chapters try to get back into it, the ones that were doing it, and for ones that are thinking about doing it, you can either contact Scott and he can pass it on to me, or contact me directly. I'm trying to put together a how-to sheet that will go out when we give you the logins and the password stuff. So, and Mike Good is, I don't know if he's still on here, but he's the vice chair and he handles getting the passwords and the logins for you. So, but it's coming along. It's coming along slow. It was hard because of the COVID to get it going back again. So,
yeah. I just sent my email address to everybody. It's also used to be on the Veterans Committee, but yeah, if you go here, committee chairman, send an email, that'll come to me. All right.
Mr. Gilder.
Yes.
This is Bill Goodman. I just want to thank you so much for the training sessions. And I promise I won't give you such a hard time next January. But thank you very much.
I actually kind of look forward to it because it's kind of fun to see all these reports and all these activities come in. And I'm a numbers guy, so I like dealing with numbers. So, but yeah, all you guys out there, thank you for your patience. I know, particularly if it's the first time you've done this, it can be a little bit of an ordeal in submitting these reports and figuring out what you can report and what you can't report. So I really appreciate all the effort you put into it. I also appreciate all your chapter members that are out there doing good work, supporting our veterans. Without them doing the actual work, we wouldn't have anything to report, and our Veterans Committee, I think, would suffer for it. So again, thank you. And if there are no other questions, I'll give you your evening back. This video, once it gets compiled and I can get it to SAR headquarters, they will post it on the website. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I will attempt to get this edited so it has chapters in it. So if there's a particular section you just want to watch, you don't want to watch the whole video, you will be able to go to that particular section and just watch that section for any questions you may have. But I can't promise that's going to happen, but I'm going to try to make it happen. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your service and your support, and have a good evening.
okay, be safe.
Bye.
Thank you. Well done.